Baron, are you with us?
Hello. Yes, gentlemen. How you doing?
Well,
Holla.
after this last call, we're both rather traumatized, but we're going to reset
I would
just for
say
you.
I would say I'm just along with you as far as this conversation. That was ridiculous. I'm tired. Thank God that ended.
We would like you to
appreciate
raise
that.
the bar. Go ahead.
Yeah. So shout out to my buddy Josh, aka Nice. He's an avid follower of your show, and he and I have been going back and forth for the past couple years, just discussing creation and things of that nature. And the other day we got to a point in the conversation where he suggested I call into the show because he didn't have any rebuttal per se for what my basic scientific explanation that I have on the reason why it's pretty obvious that we have a creator. So I guess I'll lay it out if you guys want to say anything before.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go right for it.
So it's pretty simple. I mean, all life that exists, every living organism that exists, comes from another life, right? And every single living organism is intelligent as well. So if all life comes from life, and nothing else that we have in our observable experience says that there's a way for a living organism to be created from a non-living organism, it would stand to reason that whatever created us, I'm not even making like any type of Christian argument. I'm not a Christian or anything of that nature. I'm not religious. I do believe in the scripture. We can get into that if you have any questions about that. But again, there's no organism that's living that we can observe that came from something that was non-living. And every living
If I may,
organism
I need
has
clarification, Baron, because I'm the non-scientist in this conversation. So you just said, if I heard you right, and it's a little phasey, you said all life came from life and all life is intelligent life?
Yes, all forms of life that are living organisms have a form of intelligence.
Okay, I'm going to stop right there. Forrest, how would you respond to all life is intelligent?
It's so on its face, I would say no, because I know what I mean by intelligent. But if you're saying like, I would ask, what the hell do you mean to say something like that? Like, it sounds to me like you're saying like from a molecular level, there's some sort of like seeming intentionality, like things are doing stuff, they're doing specific jobs, they're behaving in certain ways, they're following certain pathways, and that you could conflate with intelligence. Maybe that's where Baron's going with it. I just want more clarification because I disagree with you, but I want to know why I disagree with you.
I mean, when I hear intelligence, I think agency, I think consciousness, and then I'm like, all life is intelligent. Right. You haven't driven behind or in front of me on I-44 at rush hour. Right. You know what I'm saying? So go ahead, Baron. How do you mean intelligence?
Yeah, I mean, intelligence, like you just said, consciousness, awareness, intelligence has being. You know what I mean? Like if that is the case, if we all have intelligence, we all have, I mean, especially human beings wise on a human level, because that's what we're talking about, the foundation of human life. So if human beings all have intelligence and consciousness, and they all came from another living entity, it would stand to reason that human life comes from a living entity and a living organism, which Yahuwah, who I know
yeah, hang on, Barry. Yeah, we can get to Yahweh in a second. What are you telling me that all even single-celled organisms are intelligent in that way?
Not in the same way that a fully formed human is, but all cells, all organisms have a form of intelligence, and they all come from a form of life. The level of intelligence increases, obviously, with the evolution of the cell. But again, the argument isn't necessarily about what level the intelligence starts from. We know that the organism is living, and it has to come from another living organism because no human being has ever observed life coming from non-life.
Okay, I'm not going to trip on intelligence. I think we're operating with different perspectives. Forrest Valkai?
I'm curious to know, like, what would you say life is?
Life is existence, consciousness. You know, it's life. It's being. Life is being.
Right. So rocks be?
No, they're not. They're not. They're not living.
Okay, so what's the difference?
We're talking about humanity. We're talking about human
Right, but
beings.
what's you said when I asked you what the definition of life is, and you said existence.
And being, yeah, personhood. Having personhood is what we're talking about as far as this conversation. Obviously, we're talking about human and where human beings come from. And human beings come from a living organism.
Sorry, I didn't ask you what humans are. I asked you what life is. And like, I would disagree that life, every living thing has personhood. I think personhood is a social and legal construct among some civilizations of humans.
Right. For the organisms that do have personhood, for human beings that do have personhood, they come from living organisms. Can we at least get to the ground level point of saying that all organisms come from living organisms?
What? Yes. So that's called the law of biogenesis. Life begets life. All life comes from other living things. I agree on that. What I'm asking you is, what is life?
Life, for what we are discussing, which is human beings, it entails.
I'm not discussing human beings. I'm discussing life. All life.
Why are we discussing things that are inanimate objects when we know that the conversation is about creation?
I'm not discussing inanimate objects. I'm asking about life. Here's the thing, Baron. You're saying all living organisms come from other living organisms, and you're using this as an argument for creation to say that like there's no other way that we could get living things. Not every living thing is a human. So if you ask me, do all humans come from other living organisms? Of course they did. Humans evolved 200,000 years ago. Life goes way before that. But certain point, we're going to get to the beginning of life. We get to the point of abiogenesis 3.8 billion years ago. And now there's a day when there isn't anything that's alive, and then there's a day when there is something that's alive. And that's what I'm trying to get to. If you're going to say that every single living thing comes from another living thing, if you're going to say, Barrett, excuse me, I'll finish this up and I'll let you speak. What I'm trying to get across to you is I agree that today, right now, all life comes from life. That's the law of biogenesis. And yes, on this planet today, all life comes from life. We're on the same page. But the point of abiogenesis is that wasn't true one time. It's the same thing with cell theory. The third tenet of cell theory is that all cells come from other cells, except for at least one time. And so that's what we're talking about here is if we're talking about creation, we can't be talking about humans. I don't think humans, popped into existence out of nothing. I'm talking about the beginning of life on this planet. So in order to address that question, we need to talk about what the hell life is. And there's a point to me asking you this. So I'd appreciate you really trying to answer it.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I heard the beep. I thought they put me on hold. But no, my point
I did. Go ahead.
Okay. Am I back on?
Yes, you are. Go ahead.
Okay. So again, my point where I was, he went on long talking. The origin that you're trying to go back to is not a part of the conversation because we're talking about life in the form of an adamant object, something that has personhood. We're talking about creation of human beings, which is obviously separate than creation.
If I may, Baron, I have to interrupt you again. Life and personhood not being necessarily the same thing. Life exists in so many forms. Forrest has asked you, just so we understand terms, how would you define life? Not personhood, not human life, life.
Life is life from the beginning. You're talking about life as far as any living organism outside of a human. Is that what we're talking about? Because we can only be talking about one of two things. Either we're talking about a living
organism. Period. Define life from your perspective.
Define life from my perspective. It's something that's living. It's a living organism. It's a living being.
Thanks, Baron.
There's different levels. There's different. Hello?
That doesn't help. So here's the thing, Baron. Like, if we're talking about just humans, the reason I'm asking you this is because If you're just talking about where humans came from, then I'm going to talk about human evolution, and I'm going to talk about the organisms, the other animals that we evolved from. And then you're going to say, well, where did those things come from? They came from another living organism. And we're going to be right back at where I'm trying to get us now, which is where life came from in the first place.
And my whole point is that if life from the first place has to come from a living organism, life came from a living organism, which is Yahuwah, the Most High.
If it had to come from a living organism, which I'm telling you, I don't think it did.
To say that life is something that is living is almost like saying that music is something that is musical. It does not help us, Baron.
You said the perfect thing. You said the perfect thing. You don't believe that life came from life. So I would like an example of anything else out of all the billions and billions and billions of living organisms that we have, something else that came from a non-living organism. Wouldn't it make sense if you're saying you don't believe what I'm stating to be true, that there would be an example for what you believe to be true?
No. So this is what I said that 10 minutes ago as well. And we were sitting here arguing about whether or not we can agree on what life is and all this. Like that's what's so frustrating. So here's the thing. I freely admit that I don't have a case where I can show you life coming from non-life, and nor do I expect that in any case. What I have is a tremendous amount of evidence that did in fact happen, and I know about when it happened. That's what I'm trying to offer.
Hold on. What?
Okay.
And I would like to hear the evidence. I'd like to hear the evidence that you're claiming that you have, that all life started from non-life, and we don't have an example of it within the constructs of what we can observe of it ever happening again. You're just saying that we know that it happened once, and then it never happened again. What other thing in evolution evolved? Go ahead.
I didn't say that all life came from non-life. I said the first life came from non-life, and then we all came from that. That's what we call Luca, the last universal common ancestor, and then all life diversified from that one point. We all share a common ancestor. Literally every single living thing in the world shares this one ancestor.
So you're saying every living thing in the world came from a point of non-life.
Came from a thing that was alive, that self-assembled, that came together from non-living material. And so non-life did become life. That's abiogenesis.
Hold on. You're talking in circles, because at one point you just said, and I'm glad it's recorded, you said that I'm not saying that all life is not coming from, it came from non-life. I'm not saying that. Then you just reverted back and said that's what you had to admit, that all of these particles came together.
He was saying...
I'm not saying that all life today, I'm being very clear about my language. I'm not saying that birds and fish and turtles and whales all sprang into existence from non-life. I'm saying Luca came from non-life. The first living thing was non-living and then became living. And then from that point, that thing started replicating and all life diversified from there. So if you ask, this is what I was talking about a minute ago, is that if you ask, I have plenty of evidence for this, and we haven't even gotten to starting to try to talk about it, because you haven't even told me what the fuck you think life is yet, besides it's a living thing.
I'm going to take him back off mute. Go ahead.
I'm conceding that your point of view of life, of it coming from, because you said two different things. You said that non-living things became a living thing, and then all living things from that point continues to spawn off after that. My point to you is that the living, there's no proof of the non-living point that you're talking about, this Luca thing that you just mentioned. There's no proof of something being non-living, formulating the first organism, and then all life after that. You have no proof of that. There's no replicatable evidence of it.
You don't know what I have, Baron. We haven't even talked about it yet.
May I ask a question?
I'm sorry. I'm waiting.
It's not simply that I want to participate, but I just have a question. Baron, would you accept that you, even down to your genetic level, are walking, talking evidence of evolution and your relation to the entire living world? Would you accept that?
I don't, that believe in evolution, I'm talking about for the purposes of this argument, I'm willing to concede that evolution is 100% correct. And I would like for you to show
Okay,
me
wait a minute. Wait a minute.
evidence.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. You either do you not believe it and you also concede it's 100% correct? I'm not sure I understood your statement.
I think
I'm
he's
saying
saying just for the sake of
purposes
argument,
this
he's just rolling
argument,
with it.
I understand. Thank you.
I'm letting
Well,
you. I'm letting you go.
I worry that we are now in a swirling eddy, and you are never going to define what life is for us, which allows. So now we do not have a foundation on which to have the larger conversation. What I'm interested in the moment is how are you connecting life today to the Christian God Yahweh and doing so in a provable way?
No, you cannot give me beliefs that I do not have. I denounce Christianity. I do not believe in Christianity. I don't think that there's a Christian God. None of that.
Oh,
okay.
Again,
creator. You say Yahweh. It's not. That's modern Hebrew. We're talking about Paleo Hebrew. The way you would pronounce that is Yahuwah. Yahuwah.
Yeah, fine. A specific God with the proper name, rooted in whatever religious tradition. I am fascinated by the link that you have made between life and this specific deity. Can you spell it out in plain English? For me, use small words.
He is a living organism. His name is Yahuwah. All living organisms come from living organisms.
Yeah, you're making a claim. I'm asking you how you know this. You can make a claim or you can demonstrate and prove the claim. So prove it for me.
From the Torah. I'm proving, the billions and billions and billions of life forms that continue to evolve from life forms is the proof. And you do not have any evidence of a life form.
Okay. Did he just say now he believes in evolution? I think he said evolved from other life forms is proof of Yahuwah or Yahweh.
In all fairness, he may be speaking. He may be speaking loosely there to try to continue to connect with this. I'm curious to know, I still want to know what the hell life is, in his opinion, because I know what life is. I know what life is according to me, and I know the evidence for Luca and the evidence for abiogenesis that he says I don't have. I have all that ready to go, but I just need to make sure we are talking about the same thing first, so I don't waste my time with it. But now I'm curious, setting that aside, I'm also curious if all living things come from living things, all organisms come from organisms. What organism was before Yahuwah or whatever?
Yahuwah is a living organism. Jeremiah 10 and 11.
What organism produced him?
He is a living organism. Say that again.
So what organism produced him?
He is the organism that produced life.
But if all organisms come from living organisms, then there would have to have been a precursor to Yahuwah. What organism did Yahuwah come from?
There is no precursor to the creator of all things that you observe.
So just to be clear, if you can use special pleading for Yahuwah to say every living organism comes from a living organism, Yahuwah is a living organism that did not come from a living organism, then what's the problem when I'm presenting you with all life comes from life except for this one single event called abiogenesis where non-life produced life? What's the difference between our claims? I have an answer. I'm asking you for yours.
The difference between our claims is that we have continuation of Yahuwah and the proof of Yahuwah in the scriptures, through the Torah, through the prophets, and through the Gospels, not in the foundation of Christianity, but in the reality of where our existence comes from the foundation, as well as what we can actually observe in our day-to-day life. You're going off of something that you can't. You're predicting something off of make-believe, which is what you're trying to claim. My point of view is make-believe. When your foundation, you're saying, is exactly the same? Are you saying that your foundation is no different than mine?
No, I actually have evidence for my claims.
And you're quoting a book with dragons in it. So
that's just kind of where we're at.
You still haven't given me any evidence.
I know, dude, I know I haven't given you any evidence. We haven't gotten there yet. You still haven't told me what you think life is.
I told you I concede, because you're the biologist, that whatever your point of view of life is can be that point of view. You give me the definition of what you believe, I'll concede to it.
Okay, then we'll go with that. We'll go with that, and then we'll try like hell to summarize some of the evidence for abiogenesis, because we're already in 20 minutes into this call. So here's the thing. In biology, life does not have an actual set definition. What it has is a set of 7 qualifications, which not even every living thing needs to match up to, but that life as a whole does follow along and adhere to. Those are, number 1, form and function. Life is not just an amorphous, meaningless blob. There's structure, there's function, even just down to maybe the molecular level. There is form and function that dictates what life is. Number 2 is growth and development. You can't just pop into existence and pop back out. You actually have to have stages of development over the course of your entire life. Number 3 is energy conversion. You have to take in energy from somewhere and then change it to continue doing the things that you do as a living thing, either as photosynthesis, eating, whatever it may be. Most of what you're doing in that time is the next one, which is homeostasis. Homeostasis is maintaining a stable internal environment that is distinct from your external environment. Every single living organism must do this, otherwise they die. The next is response to stimuli. Things happen in the world around you, and they cause you to do stuff. Whatever it may be, doesn't have to be like a big thing, just any kind of response to stimuli in the surrounding universe is a prerequisite for life. The next one, number 6, is reproduction. You make more of yourself. You continue to create more copies, and those copies tend to be flawed, which is why number 7, the last qualification for life, is evolution. Life evolves. It always, always, always does. It is actually impossible to get away from if you know how life works even a little bit. So those are what life is as they do those things. Now the question is, how do we get from non-living material to living material? We look at what makes living material, right? And living material is made up of 4 macromolecules. There are 4 things that make up life on this planet. Those are proteins, carbohydrates, nucleic acids, and lipids. Lipids are made of fatty acids. Nucleic acids are made of nitrogenous bases. Proteins are made of amino acids. Carbohydrates are made of sugars. Those 4 building blocks of the things that make the life, the things that make living organisms, all self-assemble and have been shown to self-assemble not only on Earth, but also in outer space, where there's nobody contaminating the vials or tweaking the numbers or anything like that. We have found all 5 possible nitrogenous bases on meteorites. We have found we need 20 amino acids to make life. We have found over 500 amino acids out in space and also here on this planet. We find them in geysers on comets and shit all the time. We have found fatty acids, the building blocks of lipids, out in space. We have found sugars on comets and asteroids out in space. These things self-assemble. And the fact is, in order to get to those 7 qualifications, all you need is for those 4 building blocks to obey basic laws of chemistry. And they do. Lipids form those bilayers. If you get some phospholipids together, they're going to form that bilayer all by themselves. The way proteins work is just because of the way that they're shaped, and the way that they're shaped is just because of whatever the fuck their side chains are. They fold up that way naturally, unless they're a prion, and then you don't want to deal with it. Nucleic acids. The cool thing about RNA is that RNA is not only genetic material, it also catalyzes tons of biochemical reactions, including the entire fucking central dogma of biology. It's all responsible because, or it's all completely done by RNA. And so, like, what I'm trying to get across to you here is, you say I have no evidence of this. The fact is, we have a shit ton, because even though we've never seen this event happen, we know the pieces that go into making this happen. We know how those pieces behave. We know where those pieces come from. We know how those pieces could have assembled, and if they did, what they would have done. And what they would have done is word for word precisely the 7 things they would need to do for us to call them life. It is not a difficult concept just because we haven't seen it. Baron, what do you think about those things?
Yes, and I appreciate all those things that you said, and I agree with everything you said. And to be clear, what you said, the most important thing out of it is that they self-assemble, right? You defined everything. You defined everything about what we can observe, and you still did not give evidence on how it was assembled. You said they self-assembled, but the way that you can prove that, I'm sure, is by using science, right? Like in the lab, if you have those four things and you put those four things together, they can form into life. I'm sure. Is that the type of like test that was done to prove that those four elements together would create life? Is that a part of the proof that you're using?
No.
Forrest, help me understand. Is the idea then in science that these things were simply doing what elements do in close proximity? We're talking about action and reaction. It wasn't that they had agency.
Yep.
We are a result, but we're not the result of a plan. Would that be fair?
Yeah, is that the crazy cool thing about life is that as astounding as it is not doing anything that violates the basic laws of chemistry and physics. Living organisms, the individual pieces of a cell, they do what they are expected to do based on organic chemistry. And so, like, when I'm talking about this, the reason why I wanted to try to define life at the beginning is because it raises some profound questions. Take, for example, mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell, right? Well, 1.5 billion years ago, mitochondria were their own free living organisms. They were then engulfed by another cell, by what we call phagocytosis, and they weren't digested. So now you have a situation called endosymbiosis, which is in no way unique in the animal kingdom, let me tell you. And so you have an organism living inside of another organism. This mitochondria gets protection in this other cell, and in response, it makes a shit ton of chemical energy called ATP, which that other bigger cell uses to do the rest of whatever it needs to do to stay alive. So this is where, like, now you skip forward 1.5 billion years ago, 1.5 billion years, every single eukaryotic cell, that's not true, almost every single eukaryotic cell still has mitochondria in it, and yet mitochondria are not alive. They reproduce by themselves. They have their own DNA. They move around by themselves to make their own decisions. They're totally autonomous, but they're not technically alive because they don't meet these qualifications. Individual proteins are not technically alive, and yet certain types of proteins behave like living organisms. They go out and do stuff almost as if they're intelligent, but they're fucking not. And so when I'm trying to
give them a start point, that doesn't give them a start point.
The point that I'm trying to give you here is that the start point is fuzzy. So when each of these individual pieces of a cell are doing things that you might confuse as life if you weren't paying close enough attention, and at the end of the day, all they're actually doing is following basic chemical laws, the idea of abiogenesis being a thing, especially considering just how incredibly potent each of those individual monomers are, let alone the polymers they produce, it's not a stretch of the imagination. In fact, I think that the disbelief in it can hardly be considered serious.
The conversation, from the beginning of the conversation, didn't you espouse that I was wrong for trying to claim that a cell had intelligence when it is as complex and does all of these things autonomously without any help from any outside force? Wouldn't a cell be considered intelligent?
No. So let me ask you this. If I take pure elemental sodium and pure elemental chlorine and I put them in contact with each other, what's going to happen?
It's not a good thing. It's not a good idea.
Well, it's a fine idea. It makes table salt. It makes sodium chloride. So sodium has 1 valence electron, chlorine has 7 valence electrons. That means that chlorine is super electronegative. It really wants that extra valence electron. They snap together, they form an ionic bond, and you get table salt. This is a predicted behavior of these two vastly different elements, but it's something that obeys the laws of chemistry. Does that mean that sodium and chlorine or table salt, either one of those three, are intelligent?
The levels of complexity that are involved for them to even exist, yes. For them to
Okay,
have
so
the chemistry, that shows intelligence. For them to have,
if the argument, Baron, if the argument is that abiogenesis is impossible because salt is intelligent, I don't know how to continue with it.
Forrest, if I may, I do rather wish to be freed from the prison, which is Baron's call. I feel suffocated and alone, and I can't feel my legs. I don't know. Do you feel like that? Is there anything else you would like to say? I just think Baron is going to literally swim in circles forever. But
I'm loving the chat right now. Is Salt smart? Does Salt have personhood? Can Salt vote?
I'm sorry, and he's invoking he's invoking as proof the book of the dirt man and the blood magic and the sea monsters and leviathans and levitation and flying chariots of fire.
Only the Torah is correct.
Well, that's why I'm limiting myself to the Old Testament. Yeah, definitely in the Pentateuch. So yeah, of course, that totally validates the Yahuwah, Yahweh, whatever claim. That is interesting to me, though. The abiogenesis argument is often I don't know, it's supposed to somehow debunk everything that evolutionary scientists say, or even those who critique fundamentalist religions, those who come after Christianity, Islam, etc. Some sort of a supposed got-you is, well, where did the first cell come from? Mm-hmm. And the answer is what? We don't know. Is that right? We don't know what caused the first living cell. We have theories. You said, I think I heard the word fuzzy. You want to elaborate at all? I mean, I find that fascinating.
What I said was that the definition of life is fuzzy, and so that's like I said. We don't have a set definition for life. We have 7 qualifications, and the fact of the matter is, what life actually is. Like, take for example, we can say that human cells that are reproducing are definitely alive, right? And we can try to define that, like, oh, well, it's got unique human DNA or something like that. Well, we have cancer cells that are grown in laboratories that are, from people who died decades ago. And yet we have just tons of these cells that are growing all over the world in different laboratories. Is this person still alive and weighs thousands of pounds and lives in several countries at once? Or is that not what the word life means in that context? What about mitochondria? Like I said, they're not technically alive, but they used to be, and they are still evolving. So they evolved to be dead. What is that? What the motherfuck is a virus? Because there's still a debate. Is that alive or not? It doesn't do all 7 of those things. It barely does 3 of those things. And yet it doesn't seem to give a damn what we think. It's kind of doing its own stuff. And so this is what I mean, is that these borders of what life even is. And when you say these individual pieces of life, is that living or not? You can't live without these motor proteins, but the motor proteins certainly aren't alive on their own. But holy fuck, do they look like they're walking? And it's a crazy little thing. And so it's just a shitty argument to try to draw this staunch, definitive line in the sand and say, this is where life be. And everything before that isn't life and everything. It's as silly as asking who was the very first human. That's not how evolution works. That's not how abiogenesis works. That's not how thinking works. It's not how biology works.
I wish I had had you as a science teacher when I was growing up, complete with profanity. I would have had perfect attendance because
you got me now, amigo mio.
That's good stuff. And you just draw this stuff out of the well. Like you're just extemporaneously drawing that in front. I know this is your wheelhouse. When you do what you love and you love what you do, probably is what you're talking about. Like, did you have to sacrifice other information to make room for all of this? Like, you don't know anybody's name and you can't feed yourself, but you can talk to me about mitochondria. Is that what that's like?
I have. You should talk to me about pop culture. Do you remember? Legit question. Do you remember that one time we did a podcast together? You had me on your show and you asked me what I do for fun, and I just sat there for 5 minutes trying to come up with an answer because I didn't have anything. I still think about that sometimes. I've talked about that on other shows. Yeah, no, my life is in shambles, and if without Amber, I would be nothing.
No, it's fine. He was very kind. I stopped by his studio a few days ago, and it's one of the most cool sciencey places. And I'm like, when you do what you love and you love what you do, this is what drives you. But honestly, it's good for the rest of us. And I will say, even though I have a lot of fun at the expense of the callers, and they deserve it, is that they sometimes do tee us up for conversations the rest of us can benefit from, whether it's the evolution of the eye, the gradients of eyes. in the living world getting into the first cell? How did non-living things become a cell? And is that or is that not an argument in relation to whether or not there is a God? What God would that be? If somebody comes to you and says, where did the first cell come from as proof of God? Your response as a counter apologetic would be what? How would you approach it, Forrest?
Abiogenesis. The first cell arose from totally normal chemical processes in remarkably mundane conditions,
Yeah, but
acting
the
on
argument
self-assembled organic compounds.
is that matter cannot be is it energy or matter cannot be created or destroyed? Which one is it?
Both. Both.
So it would have had to have been conjured is probably the best word.
But that's a different question. Is we're talking about where did the first human come from, and then you talk about the earliest of life. Well, that's a different question. Human evolution and abiogenesis are billions of years apart. And then you ask, well, where did the matter come from? Now you're even more farther. You're going back to the Big Bang, and that's a totally different question. So like, this is what happens a lot with creationists is they will conflate terms about evolution with meaning the evolution of us versus the evolution of animals versus the evolution of the beginning of life versus the beginning of the earth versus the beginning of the universe versus the beginning of matter versus the beginning, all of this. And like, those are all very different questions with very different answers. And you can't study some of them without understanding the other ones, but like, you don't need these things to overlap in order to fill in your blank. I don't know fucking shit. I'm not a cosmologist. Look at me. I'm not doing that. But I know enough to hold my own in the conversation with other non-cosmologists.
That's good stuff. I've enjoyed listening.
Hello, I'm Jimmy Snow, executive producer of The Line, and I only became a woodworker for the puns. That's not important. If you would like to support this channel, you can do so on our Patreon or as a channel member, and you can actually support specific shows and specific hosts in special tiers on those. Check those options out. Also, you can leave a super thanks and get a little highlighted deal. But if all else fails, you can always you can subscribe and leave a comment. Now, here are some suggestions because I don't care about the algorithm. I am the algorithm. Bye.